Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We just had heard the state of the state and some of the talking points that the governor talked about. To me, it's difficult to understand. He talks about property tax relief, and repeatedly we have sent him bills for property tax relief, and he has vetoed them. He talks about crime prevention. We send him tons of gun bills. He has vetoed those. He talks about debt service, that we can't afford it, even though that they borrow without voter approval for the Transportation Trust Fund instead of pay-as-you-go. Talks about education, that is important, and these different aspects of making the school day longer, the school year longer. These are things we got to look at. But when he has just vetoed a study commission for pre-K, for full-time pre-K, which we know it's proven that it's real, then that's disingenuous. We're not talking about education. It's just different sound bites that, to me, don't mean much. So I think we have to have an honest conversation. Today, in my speech, the majority leaders and the assembly side, we talked about doing the right things, looking how we can tackle property taxes the real way. We have net 20% in the last 4 years. That's not realistic. When we talk about all these initiatives that he wants to do, but then at the end he says, well, we can't afford to make our pension payments. That's not right. So we need to do something that we can work together with, something that's viable. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a soundbite. It has to be real. It has to be of substance. And like when you talk about education, let's really talk about it. You have to fund the education funding formula to see how it works. So let's start from there. I want to turn it over and give it to Senate President Sweeney so he can say some few words.
Look, he talked about having an honest conversation, and that's not what we had today. We made a commitment several years ago to fix the pension system, and we asked the employees to contribute more to fix the pension system. And that commitment was written into the law. And now to say, well, we can do all these programs, but we got to choose between really the pension system, funding the pension system, and paying our bills. But we can do all these wonderful things. That wasn't an honest conversation. That's a bait and switch. Look, if you want to have an honest conversation, let's have an honest conversation. Property taxes are too high. Instead of talking about tax cuts as he has in the past, talk about refunding the tax cut programs that he cut. Look, we're ready, willing, and able, the Assembly and the Senate, to stand and have a very honest and hard discussion. But we're not going to take the pensions away from the people that just refunded them. We're halfway through, and we are not going to end. That was the key component that when we made a promise. And then to use that issue as how we can fund all these other issues, absolutely not. That's not an honest discussion, and we're not going to back off on that. We made a commitment, and we're going to stick to it. I'll turn over to Majority Leader. Which Majority Leader?
Well, we're
Greenwald.
alternating, so
Greenwald.
Alternating
Big one
Majority.
is a little.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. The governor stood here last year at this time and talked about how we were in such great financial shape that we could afford a tax cut on people making over $1 million a year. We said at the time that the state couldn't afford it. He's never admitted that the state couldn't afford it, but he's saying to you today that we can't afford to make the pension payment. Many of you might remember when the governor was talking about pension reforms. Those are reforms that we had advocated for in 2006. It was taking our model off the shelf and moving it forward because we recognized that there was a problem that had to get fixed. It was the legislature that pushed that for the phase-in of these payments, recognizing the fiscal crisis that we faced, but also recognizing the importance of living up to our commitment. When we did the pension reform, which was very controversial, very difficult, very hard to go to people who had done nothing wrong and ask them to make increased payments to help protect their retirements, the state said, through the legislative leaders that are standing here, we would do our part and make these payments. It would be a break of the public trust to not follow through on that. When the governor talks about an increase in personal income wealth, it belies the fact that what we have in New Jersey is a shrinking middle class and a growing poor. So that tells you that the wealthier are getting wealthier by greater percentages than middle class families and certainly the poor that we continue to struggle with. 4 years ago, when the governor ran for his first term, he called what we had invested in pre-K programs under Governor McGreevey, which had some of the greatest impacts in kindergarten to fourth grade test scores in the 30 poorest school districts in the state, which the governor referenced today. The governor called those programs babysitting. So it's very important that we remember the history so that when we tackle these problems going forward, we know exactly where we've been and what the future holds. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing to climb out of what is a recession. New Jersey continues to fall behind neighboring states and to struggle and languish in our recession. The truth of the matter is the tax that we talked about today, which is fundamentally reforming how we pay for local governments and the over-reliance on property taxes in a bipartisan way, which is what the Speaker and I know the Senate President and the Majority Leader in the Senate are committed to, a bipartisan solution to ending what is a broken tax system, to fix something that is crippling our economy, which is the true disease of this state, which is the property taxes, will solve a lot of the other economic problems that we face. I just want to say on the on the issue of, again, the governor referenced, I think his concerns around municipalities going around the property tax cap to go to local fees. That's something that every one of us, every member of the legislative leadership has talked about as a problem, something that needs to be avoided, and it's passing the buck. The reality, though, is it is a key indicator that the tax cap alone, which is what we said when he passed it, the tax cap alone was a Band-Aid approach and not a long-term solution without other things like shared services, consolidation, and ultimately reforming the over-reliance on property taxes. Majority Leader Weinberg.
I guess they forgot to bring the stool.
They can't see over this.
I'm actually here. First of all, I want to thank my colleagues for outlining the issues. And I said in a moment of exchange with the governor in the aisle, I am ready to have an honest discussion and find the areas upon which we can agree in a bipartisan manner. Certainly, it's been outlined that he's using the pension system, those very payments that he promised he was going to make suddenly are going out the window. I would like to concentrate on pre-K. The idea that he vetoed the pre-K study commission. This is about a program that we all know works. It's one of those programs that really doesn't need some long-range plans for. We know that pre-K improves a student's chance to excel. We know that, and we need to fund it. And taking up of what Majority Leader Greenwald talked about, the income disparity in the last 4 years in the state of New Jersey has grown tremendously. We have people earning $25,000 and then the most wealthy at the other end. And it is the shrinking middle class and the growing poor in our state that we have to talk about. So it's income equity. It is an educational system that starts with pre-K, and it is a pension system where we meet our obligations. I think we are all ready for that honest discussion, and I'm looking forward to it on a whole bunch of different levels. Thank you.
Just one more point. When he talked about public safety, in his first year, he cut $450 million to public safety. And then when we put $50 million back for those urban areas, he vetoed that. So these are things that we're dealing with. We want to have an honest discussion, and we want to see what we can do working together. And there is a middle ground that we can make all this work. Pension payment has to be made. That's escalating every year, and that's growing. And everybody knew it. It was going to be a 7-year-out payment. So we're all committed for that. The people have been paying into it. They really have tightened the belt, so we have to do the same. So we have to keep working together.